water. We had a strike about 50 meters off the stern, and I can tell you, I jumped
Oh
a
my
long
goodness.
way into the cabin, and you were in a steel hull. So that was a definite scary moment.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, there you go.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Vera. Certainly, mine was mid-Atlantic as well, and my mast was in an 80-foot yacht, and the mast was moving from the base, and I had no idea if it was meant to be doing that. And my children were asleep on the floor, on the sole, I should say. And I remember this thought in my head was, their legs are too short, as in
Mm,
they're too young to die. And
not
that's
yet.
all my head was totally racing. So I'm actually with you.
Yeah.
So now, Jamie, you may not have sailed Atlantic with children or around the world with children, but you've had a different type of responsibility. They're kind of your children in a way, aren't they? Those crew of the boats that you've been responsible for. Have you got a scary moment to share with us when you're actually responsible for all those people?
Yeah, I guess it's more than that, because you're responsible for, not only their safety, but they have wives and husbands, and they have children, and I guess, my biggest scariest moment came at about 1 a.m. in the morning, as it always does, and I was lying in my bed in Cowes in the Isle of Wight, and the team were halfway between New Zealand and Brazil, at a place called Point Nemo, which is the geographically furthest point from land on the planet. So it happened about, I think we were about 60 miles away from that point, and my phone goes and it says boat sat phone. Any of you ever in this position, when boat sat phone goes on your mobile, it is never to tell you good news or ask the football scores or something, ever. And it's the skipper, Ian Walker, and he says, "We've got an issue. We found a 2 meter crack in the port side of the boat. We've capsized the boat by canting the keel over. We've stopped. It's 25 knots, and we think the boat's breaking up." And at that point, we have a crisis management plan. So he gives me as much information as he can, and then it's an Apollo 13 moment. You press the panic button. We all have a little card we carry with us with phone numbers, and days before Zoom, it was a conference call phone number, and we have design, engineering, personnel, logistics, sponsorship, PR, and everybody's on the call. And at that point, we assumed the boat was breaking up, and we were going to have 12 guys or 10 guys in a life raft. Um, the quickest that the New Zealand Navy could get there was 5.5 days. The closest the Chilean Navy could get there was 6 days. We'd broken a bulkhead on the way out of New Zealand and had missed the frontal system that pushed the fleet forward, because normally the fleet is your safety net.
Yeah.
And we were over 1,000 miles behind the rest of the fleet. The closest man-made object to the boat was the satellite through which Ian was phoning me.
My goodness
So
me.
that still gives me chills. We we worked through the scenario, fortunately, and basically you assess the situation, you split the problem up into sections, you hand the sections to each portion of the call, and you reconvene 15 minutes later, and you keep doing that until there's a solution. So the solution ended up being Justin Slattery, the hardest man I know in offshore sailing, and another Irish legend, um, over the side of the boat in a survival suit on a halyard from the mast, drilling 22 holes in the side of the boat in the Southern Ocean. I think the air temperature was like 4 degrees. I think the water temperature was 3 degrees. So we'd come to the conclusion, Ian and I, that if they were getting into rafts, that was it. They were not going to make it.
And how
Um,
long can one stay in the water, submerged in the water with your survival suit on
it
in
sort of
that
didn't.
temperature?
It sort of didn't really matter because nobody was coming to get you anytime soon.
Holy shit. Sorry.
So a bit like your car windscreen, if you get a crack, we had the split, the 2 meter split, and we just drilled holes. We took every bolt out of bunks, drilled holes along the thing, and bolted it together. One guy with a ratchet strap. There's YouTube videos of it, and it all looks very calm and sensible. But I can assure you that is the scariest moment. For I'd say about an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe slightly more. you know, I'm the guy that has to make the phone call to the people associated with it. So most of the race is about trying to win, managing budget, logistics, you know, performance. And in that moment, none of that seemed to matter. And we were all asking ourselves, what the hell are we actually doing? You know, there's 10 of our 11 of our mates out there. You know, what the hell are we doing this
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, I think I can picture that.
That was pretty nerve-wracking.
My goodness me. Yeah. So
Closely,
Pamela,
closely followed by trying to get down Key Street when the boats arrived into Galway during the 08-09 race. That was pretty scary too.
Having all the cheering, that was quite something, wasn't it, when they came into Galway, for sure.
Terrifying.
More terrifying than me sat here with all these faces. Wow, that's amazing. So I mean, Pamela, you have some big goals. Yeah, you know, from what we've been chatting about, we've had a few chats recently, you know, and you have some quite large goals in your life. Do you want to share what your big goal is with regards to your offshore sailing?
Yeah, well, the immediate goal, or the number one goal, or we'll say like the first step goal, is the double-handed, the new mixed double-handed division of the Olympics for Paris 2024, which is how I got into the Figaro in the first place. So myself and Kenny Rumble, my teammate, are currently actively campaigning to hopefully get the slot to represent Ireland in the mixed double-handed World Championships, and for that to lead on and hopefully go to the Olympics in Paris 2024. So that's the number one goal, and kind of what feeds into that is like this summer Kenny did the Solitaire de Figaro, because we you know, with COVID and everything that kind of came all our training and all the plans were kind of cancelled, and all the double-handed stuff was cancelled as well. So we thought about it as a team, and we decided that doing the Figaro circuit and the solo racing, as well as any double-handed racing that was there, was the best way for each of us, or one of us, to get better at short-handed offshore sailing, because neither of us had done short-handed offshore sailing before. So Kenny did that this year, which was an absolutely incredible feat, and we both learned so much from that. So we're hoping to take that forward into our double-handed sailing this year, continue competing on the Figaro circuit, which has a double-handed focus this year. And then depending how we go with sponsorship and all of that sort of stuff, which we're currently chasing down, I'd like to do some of the solo racing as well, because again, it's going to be the best way for me to improve in my offshore sailing and for us to improve as a team. So that's number one. And then beyond that, probably got the same goals as most offshore sailers. No matter what Brian says about how horrible the IMOCAs are offshore and the Atlantic, he still hasn't turned me off. So
don't do it, Pamela. Don't do it.
So while we're there, actually, Brian, come on. This question isn't actually on my screen here, but while we're there, so give us something, some grit, you know. So tell us, you know, what makes it. What's the toughest thing about being an IMOCA?
Go on, try and
other than that, you're going to run out of star bars pretty early on.
Well, put it this way: the last 6 years of my life has been making money going offshore sailing, and then when I had the opportunity to do some. The old generation IMOCAs I sailed, and they were fine because you got to 25 knots, and occasionally on a bit of a surf you might get to 30. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Then I got introduced to some high-end stuff when Alex Thompson asked me to come over to do some drone stuff on board his boat. And that was the old generation, which is the new 11th hour racing boat for the ocean race with Charlie and Mark. But when Alex said, oh, let's go try it out, and Neil MacDonald was on board with us. So we went offshore down the Solent for like 3 days. And you just can't sleep. The noise level is something beyond. It's like about 110, 120 decibels. You're not able to sleep. And then for like trying to stand or move around the boat, because there's no grab handles, and you know the Volvo 65s are designed very differently. There's a lot of areas and bulkheads, and the IMOCA downstairs is just open, and it's not designed to have 4 people to go offshore with it. But we Alex wanted to set up a test for a 10-minute run, and they run these tests and it's really boring actually, because they just do the same thing and change a small little thing on the boat, like a foil angle or something. The boat didn't drop below 31 knots in the 10 minutes, and we peaked out at 37. And it is so violent. So he said, I think you should put the drone up. And I said, I don't know, Alex, because this is getting a little bit sketchy. The boat, I've never flown with a boat that's gone over consistently over 30 knots before. And he says, what did I pay you for? Put the bloody drone up. I said, I'll do you a deal. If I lose the drone, you pay for it, and then I'll take the risk. And then he said, okay. And we did it. And the drone barely kept up. It's okay, drones keep up downwind, but when the boats are doing 90 degrees true to the wind, and they're on the foils, and this thing's doing 34 knots, it's so violent on the boat, I have to wedge. Normally I'd kind of sit quite happily and fly the drone, but it was so violent, I had to wedge myself between two primary winches and get the guys to hold me, because I couldn't actually stay in because it was so violent inside the cockpit. So I can only imagine what his new boat is even like. And I've had a similar experience sailing with Boris on Boris Herman on Milizia, and a slightly different, slightly slower Maka, but again, the sleeping conditions are horrendous. It's so violent, and it's so loud. It's just, I mean, I won't even get into trying to use the bathroom in one of those things. It's a bucket, but you can't even sit on that comfortably for more than 10 seconds without getting thrown off. So it makes life is so difficult just to do the very fundamental things a person is meant to do. It's just incredible. I love sailing. I love going offshore. I'm all for it, but I'm very happy to be now with Sail GP, where I get in a rib, take some pictures, and then go back to a hotel room and have a shower and use an orbital toilet and not be banging off the oceans. No, it's just not for me anymore. I've done it. I don't need to prove anything else to myself. I think my offshore days are of that level anyway. I think I'll just hang up the boots this time, but I said that in the last race and I came back for another one. So, you know.
I'm sure someone will convince you to come out at some point, won't they, Pamela?
Yeah.
And Vera, so let's talk in speed now. Again, I've gone totally off piece now with my questions. Let's talk in speed and let's get some comparisons. So when, tell us, what type of boat were you cruising around the Atlantic with, Vera?
She's a Bruce Roberts 43-foot ketch.
Lovely.
Steel. I was just laughing at Brian there. Brian, get yourself a nice big steel ketch.
And what sort of speed would you, when you were like, what speed would you get excited at? I get excited at 8 knots.
We would get excited, coming up to 6. Like, yay, go. Well, now, in fairness, I mean, she's a great off the wind sailor. You know, I don't like to put her down. And she needs a lot of wind. I mean, she needs over 20 knots really, and we certainly got that with the trade winds. I mean, we had one huge exhilarating sail coming from going down to the Cape Verdes from the Canaries. 5 days of absolute awesome sailing, and that was great. And we were surfing down at 8-9 knots, way full speed. but it was exhilarating for us, because you know we just had a small Genoa up, and we're going down some fairly reasonable kind of waves, not Southern Ocean kind of stuff, but still, fairly great conditions, so that was fab. Sorry, what was the question?
Yeah. How fast do you go? What speed do you get excited at?
Yeah, so we got excited on that leg.
So just very quickly on speed then. So Jamie, so the 2014, 2015 Volvo Ocean race, your boat won. Again, just we're not talking that long ago, and yet boats have developed so much now. What sort of speed would they get then?
I mean, Brian would, he's been on board the things. I mean, I think we saw high 20s as a peak. But it's not the top speeds. It's the consistent average speeds of these things that really chew the miles up. I mean, they 400 or 500 miles a day is sort of standard practice. It's not unusual.
Well, they're doing that solo on the Vendée at the minute.
Yeah, with a lot of software, autopilots. It's like when you've actually got to pull the ropes yourself and steer the boat yourself, it's slightly different. I take my hat off to those guys, and I do some work with Andrew Cape, and who's part of Alex Thompson's team. So we've been sort of in discussion about per Alex's position at the minute. So it's, yeah, but I mean, you know, 400 or 500 mile days are nothing. And they, you know, only a few years ago, if somebody broke 400 miles a day, it was like the land speed record, you know, it's incredible. But, you know, I think the interesting question, and especially in the Vendée, is going to be, you know, just because you can, should you? Right. So, you know, we're only 17 days in. Alex has broken the front of his boat. Linked Out's broken their port foil. You know, just because you can go that quick, you know, it'll be interesting to see how Jean Le Cam does. You know, I'm quietly looking at him, you know, very, very experienced sailor, like total legend. And, you know, he's got an old school boat, and he's, you know, he's not that far away, you know. Now, yes, if they get through the Southern Ocean and stretch their legs, but, you know, just again, you know, when you're looking at technology and performance in yacht racing, and it's fantastic to push the boundaries, and these things are amazing. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, no, I like that phrase. I think we can all apply that phrase to a lot of things in life. So I think maybe we should,
a lot of aspects of our sailing,
magnet.
a lot of aspects of our sailing, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, Pamela, talking speed, when the boat's up in those foils, is there a sound? What can you give us the sound? Is it, woo, what does it do? Is it when you first heard that I've heard that it gives a quiver?
Yeah, well, the foils on the Figaro are actually they're very different from the Amaka foils. I just kept them. So as you see there, they're sticking out and into the water. So the Figaro doesn't actually lift up out of the water. It kind of, the foil adds to the riding moment because the keel on the Figaro is very, very skinny. But there is a hum, and I specifically remember the first time getting the hum, and you just go, but actually I think it's the foil vibrating, and it's not necessarily a really good thing, but you think it's good because you think it means you're going fast. And yeah, there is definitely a hum that comes out of it. And there was one day, when the first time we brought the boat back to Ireland, and we were actually we were coming up past Wicklow Head and past Bray and up into Dunleary. And you know, the wind was coming off the shore, so it was coming down these big gusts, and we were kind of getting these nice gusts of like 25, 30 knots, and the water was absolutely flat. And I think for Kenny and I, kind of, that was the first time we really sailed the boat on our own. The first time we sailed the boat on our own was when we stepped on it in France to bring it back to Ireland. And we had gotten quite slammed on the delivery. Like, we'd been going fast, but it was like big waves, big swell. We'd seen 50 knots a few times. So we were pretty wrecked by the time we were coming up the coast of Ireland. And we just got this dream run up that bit from Brayhead to Dunleary, with that wind coming in, the flat water. And I think that for both of us was the first time we really felt that like extra little bit of acceleration from the foil. And it was just, yeah, it was that extra kind of oomph that you get for having, you know, the sweet spot with the wind and the water, and just having yourselves absolutely right. So there's definitely a little bit of satisfaction that comes from that. Slightly addictive, of course.
Yeah, I'd say so. And it was probably your moment where, using Jamie's words and twisting them a little bit, is where you thought, I can do it, so I will do it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, we certainly do worry about all the guys right now that are sailing down into the Southern Ocean and watching various things go wrong. I think we're all watching that in quite some detail for sure, you know. Now, Pamela, we were chatting before, and you shared some really, what I found was really interesting conversation about opening sailing up and creating an understanding of sailing, because sailing events and racing, it's kind of off from the, let's say, for example, in Dunleary, it's off from the pier, or down here in Bantry, it's people can see the boats, people take pictures of them in the distance, and we all know Fulcher Island love to take pictures of Ireland with boats sailing past. It's a big dream for people, and you had some thoughts on that, on how to make people see that, you know, what sailing is about. You were sharing that with me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to remember exactly what I was.
I'll give you a nudge. It's about touching and feeling and seeing and understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, one of the things, one of the kind of big eye openers that happened for me this year, where we were over, and Kenny and I were over in France for the 6 months, basically, for the leading up to the Solitaire and the races before that as well. And what really struck us, and we talked about it a lot, and it was really incredible, and I know Tom Dolan would say exactly the same thing. We've talked to him about it as well, and I know Joe Malloy also agrees, as well as Marcus Hutchinson. In France, there's like the sailing, it's much more of a public sport, like rugby is here. The public are like massively behind it, and they all know, like in the solitaire, you go from port to port, so the boats sail into ports, like kind of mini tour. And sailing into each port, you know, there would be crowds on the side welcoming the boats in. In Sable d'Olonne, it was like a mini Vendée. There was people cheering them out and cheering in, and the docks are all completely open, so people can walk down and like really see the boats and look at the boats and talk to the skippers. And even part of the skipper program was, you know, there was school groups coming around and they had to chat to them. So, you know, Kenny was there trying to chat in French to a group of school kids, you know, stuff like that. And it really kind of struck home how great it can be if everyone's kind of engaged like that. And it can really just open up the possibilities, and people, if you can see it, then you can aspire to be it. So, you know, France has a lot of very active, good offshore sailors, and also it kind of links then into the sponsorship, because companies want to sponsor because they're getting that feedback from the public. So it's a really nice ecosystem, and that's kind of basically something that we really tried to do when we did the Iraq Magenta, the Round Ireland. We took the boat to Greystones, which was really great anyway, because it's where I'm from, it's where my parents live. But they have the new marina there, and the guys there were really, really awesome, and, you know, took us in. But the great thing about the marina there is the boat is just sitting open, and anyone can walk around down on the pier and around, and they can look down and they can see this kind of, well, what's that? That boat looks a bit different from the other cruising boats there. What's that thing sticking out the side? Oh, it looks kind of cool. Who are those girls going out? And, you know, we'd sail out through the harbour every day, and there'd be people out there watching us. And people would come up and talk to us, and they'd ask us about it. And I think that also, you know, that fed back into, we got like a lot of really positive local press as well as national press off it. And I think there was a genuine curiosity because people could see what was going on, and I think that's really something that we should try and do more of.
Absolutely. Well, I think we have quite a big audience here today, and I think everyone would agree with this, you know, is that and someone has actually made a note there about sailing being part of the curriculum, which it is in France. And I think the government tried to bring in a little bit this year, a couple of years ago,
and Skull
do some more work on that. And in Skull, of course, Skull is very much part of the curriculum. I think David Hart
is flying the flag for Irish sailing in school curriculums. He's doing a great job.
Certainly.
Harty.
Harty. Yeah, absolutely. It was. I tried to get my own sons over there into that school, and it's not easy to get into if you're not in the area. So yeah, keep on going, Harty. You know, hopefully we'll all be back on the water next year with the kids and everything. And indeed, something that's happened this year is that there are an awful lot more people outside on the water. I think anyone that's in the industry has noticed there are more and more people trying to get on the water, swimming, sailing, kayaking, and also doing outdoor sports. So this is an absolutely magic opportunity for us all to embrace all those new interested people and help to bring them in, give them that stepping stone, give them a chance to try sailing, give them a chance to look at your boat. So loads of videos, everyone, get them up on your social channel.